So, hello, friends, and welcome to another episode on our study of Zoroastrianism. Now, in the last class, we saw about Zoroastrian eschatology. Today, we shall take a look at some different concepts that we find in Zoroastrianism. So, before that, let's take a look at, or let's try to find out what we can see in the above pic. So we see that many of you would guess that it has something to do with Zoroastrian priests or those in charge of liturgy or their rituals. Here also we see the same picture where you have the Zoroastrian priests performing some kind of a ritual. Now, one very important fact that you would have noticed is the white scarf or the white mask that they wear. Now, this is worn by them especially when they are close to the sacred fire or when they are doing some ritual. The whole understanding is this, that the impurities of the mouth should not contaminate the fire or the religious practices that they are doing. And therefore you see that just there is one thread tied above on both the sides, and this is a kind of a white cotton cloth. Now, when we look at the whole concept of priesthood in Zoroastrianism, we see that it plays a very important role in maintaining religious practices, overseeing rituals, preserving the teaching of Zoroaster, and also making sure that the tradition is being kept up to. Now, historically, we see that Zoroastrian priesthood this evolved over time, especially under the influence of the Magi, a group that became deeply intertwined with Zoroastrianism and also held significant religious authority. So therefore, we need to take a look at the role of the Magi. Now, originally we see that the Magians, they were not deeply connected to Zoroaster and his teachings. So they were likely a median tribe that likely practiced a kind of a pre-Zoroastrian religion. Now, however, by the 4th century BCE, these Magians, they became acquainted with Zoroastrianism and they gradually adopted the tenets and teachings of Zoroastrianism, and this happened particularly during the influence of the Achaemenid Empire. Now, during this period, we see that the Magi gained religious prominence in the Achaemenian court, and they became key religious authorities. Thus, in this way, we see that they, in a way, blended their own traditions with those of Zoroastrianism. Now, the term Magus continued to be used during the Abbasid period, but it was under the Sassanians. So, under the Sassanians, that is in 224 to 651 BCE, we see that the priestly hierarchy was fully developed. Now, the Sassanian dynasty, which made Zoroastrianism the state religion, it also formalized the structure of Zoroastrian priesthood, and it created a distinct rank and offices within the religious system. So let's take a look at the hierarchy of the Zoroastrian priesthood. Now, during the Sassanian period, a highly structured hierarchy of priesthood emerges. So you have a highly structured priesthood. Now, this hierarchy was done for proper administration of religious duties, and for the maintenance of the temples and the sacred fires. Now, this structure included several key roles. First among them was the Magupat, or the chief of the Magi. So, under the Sassanians, the position of Magupat was created to denote the chief of the Magi. Now, this role was highly prestigious and in a way it involved overseeing other priests. Now, therefore, the title, that is Magu Patan Magupat, that is chief of the Magi, was modeled after the royal title of Shahanshah, that is King of Kings, and therefore this signified the leader of the entire priestly order, who was also responsible for the administration of religious affairs in the empire. Next, you have the Erfat. Now, he was originally a religious teacher. Now, this role evolved into a one with specific responsibilities, where they were in a way responsible for taking care of the sacred fire, which we see is a central element of Zoroastrian worship. Now, the Erfat was considered to be a priest of lower degree. And in major religious ceremonies, he would also serve as a assistant priest, helping the senior priest in their ritual. Now next you have the Mobed. Now above the rank of the Erfat was the Mobed, a more senior priest who performed important religious ceremonies and also was responsible for maintaining the rituals that are necessary for protection of truth and order. So, in a way, he also oversaw the practice of the Zoroastrian rites, and he also was responsible for guiding the faithful in their religious duties. And then you have the concept of the Dastur, who was a high-ranking priest, equivalent role to bishop, in some religious traditions. Now, the Dastur was responsible for directing one or more important temples and administering the religious community in a specific region. Now, this position in a way held both religious as well as administrative power, with duties that also went beyond individual rituals to also include broader governance of ritual matters. So he also, in a way, played a key role in overseeing the education and training of other priests. Now we see that they also had a hereditary nature of priesthood, and this is one of the most distinctive features of Zoroastrian priesthood. Now this means that the role of the priest was passed It was passed down through generations within specific priestly families. Now, sons born in these families were expected to continue the legacy, they were expected to become priests and thus continue the religious legacy of their ancestors. Now, despite this hereditary nature of priesthood, we see that entering the priesthood also required formal religious training, and also you had to complete certain specific ceremonies of investiture. Now, these ceremonies were performed, or they were in addition to the rituals practiced by all Zoroastrians. Now, this also signified the priest's readiness to perform sacred duties. Now, these investiture rites, we see that, were an important initiation process. And this, in a way, marked the priest's entry into religious hierarchy. Thus, having their commitment to serve both the community as well as the divine. Now, what were the functions of the Zoroastrian priests? So now we see that Zoroastrian priests had a range of responsibilities, primarily centered around the maintaining of the sacred fire. They also had to perform other rituals and ensure that the community also follows the religious teachings of Zoroaster. Now, the care of the sacred fire is especially important in Zoroastrianism, as fire is seen as a symbol of purity, and it also signifies the presence of Ahura Mazda, that's the supreme deity. Now, in the temples, the fire must be kept burning continuously. And it is the responsibility of the priest to ensure that this is done with the utmost care and reverence. Now, when we speak about the other duties, you also have conducting rituals. So, some of the important rituals that they perform are the ones of the yasna ceremony, where you have reciting sacred texts and offering to Ahura Mazda, and you also have the Nav Jote, that is the initiation ceremony for young Zoroastrians. Apart from this, you also have the performing other rites of passage, which are associated with birth, marriage, and death. Now we see that these rites are essential in guiding individuals through key stages of life, and also ensuring that their actions are aligned with truth, righteousness and order. And then you also have the interpretation and teaching. So they have the responsibility of also educating the laity about Zoroastrian teachings, about the ethics, and also about the proper religious practice. Now, they also interpret sacred texts, ensuring that the community understands the moral and spiritual obligations that are required of them. Now we come to the ceremonies. Now we see that Zoroastrian ceremonies are deeply symbolic and they are structured around key rituals and practices, which also emphasize on the religion's purity, devotion, and sacredness of the elements like fire. Now these ceremonies are integral to Zoroastrian life, beginning from childhood, where you have the initiation to daily rituals, then also purification rites and the essential yasna ceremony. So when we speak about the initiation ceremony, it is called as the Navjote. Now this Navjote is an initiation ceremony for young Zoroastrians. Now when we speak about the rite, this rite occurs at the age of 7 in India and at the age of 10 in Persia. And it involves two key elements that symbolize lifelong devotion to Zoroastrian principles. So as you can see in the picture, you have this kind of a sacred thread and you also have the white garment which they are wearing. So now we see that the first important element here is the sadre, that is a sacred white shirt that they must wear, and this is worn for life. Throughout their life it is worn and it symbolizes purity and righteousness. Now you also have the kusti, that is a sacred girdle that is woven out of 72 fine woolen threads, and this is tied around the waist three times during prayers. And this represents a commitment to faith protection from evil, and the continuous battle against sin. Now, after the initiation, the individual is expected to wear this garment every day, and they also have to recite prayers while tying and untying the kusti as part of the personal spiritual discipline. Now, there are also types of purification which are very important. So, first, you see that purity is central theme in Zoroastrianism, and there are three main types of purification ceremonies that individuals may undergo, which range from basic cleansing to more elaborate rituals. So, first that we have is the padyak, that is ablution. Now, this is a simplest form of purification, and it involves washing the face, hands and feet with water. Now, it is a daily practice meant for basic ritual cleanliness, and it is done before prayer or any sacred acts. Next is the nahan or the bath, which is a deeper form of purification. Now, here we see that the individual takes a bath to cleanse body and mind, and this is done before important religious occasions or after becoming religiously impure or after becoming ritually impure. And then you also have the Vareshnum. Now, the Vareshnum is a kind of a more elaborate and significant ritual or a significant purification ritual. Now, this is performed by someone who has seriously defiled or who is preparing for priesthood. Now, this ceremony lasts for several days and also takes place at several sacred locations. Now, an important part of this ritual is the presence of a dog. Now, why is this? It is said that the candidate must touch the left ear of the dog. And it is said in Zoroastrianism, the dog's gaze drives away evil spirits. And therefore we see that the Barishnum ritual signifies a cleansing or a profound cleansing of both soul and body. Now we come to the whole aspect of penance. Now penance in Zoroastrianism means seeking forgiveness for one's sins. Now it involves reciting the Patet, which is a prayer of repentance, where the individual makes a resolve not to sin again. And then we see that this is accompanied by a confession of sins made to the Dastur, that is a high-ranking official or any ordinary priest, if the Dastur is not available. Now we see that this confession and reading the Dastur are important because they help to restore the person's spiritual purity. So they restore spiritual purity, and they also in a way align the persons to the principles of truth and order. And therefore the penance ritual highlights the importance of moral accountability and the possibility of redemption in Zoroastrianism. And finally, let's take a look at the Yasna ceremony. Now, this is a central religious ceremony in Zoroastrianism, and it is essentially a kind of a sacrificial rite that is performed in the presence of the sacred fire. And it also involves reciting large portions of the Avesta, that is the Zoroastrian holy scriptures. Now, this ceremony also involves various offerings and symbolic acts. One among that is the Hauma sacrifice. Now, one of the central act of Yasna is offering of the Hauma. Now, this is a sacred liquor that is prepared from the juice of the Hauma plant, and this sacrificial offering is imbued with also spiritual significance, as Hauma is also believed to grant health, strength and spiritual insight. Now, other offerings also involve offering of milk and bread, which symbolize sustenance and purity. And in ancient times, we see that meat or animal fat was also offered as sacrifice, but these practices have become less common. Now we see that the yasna is a highly formalized ritual that also involves a series of prayers, chants and precise actions that are performed by the priest. Now the whole purpose of the yasna is to reinforce the bond between humanity and divine. And thus to ensure cosmic harmony and maintain purity of the sacred fire. So that's all for this class. In the next class, we will take a look at the sacred fire, some ceremonies related to the sacred fire, daily prayers, burial rites, and also certain rituals before the removal of the corpse, the Tao of Silence, and also the festivals that are performed. So with this, we end today's class. Thank you and see you next time.